Okay, this one is Lakota religion. This is going to be about as basic an overview as I can get, so naturally it's going to be about 5 months long. Generally, this doesn't seem that much different from Christianity to me for a lot of different reasons. And in fact, that is kind of what a lot of early Christians, they didn't think it would be that hard to convert them to Christianity, since they already had most of the concepts of Christianity in their own religion already. But essentially, this is boiling down to the idea of the Great Spirit that you will hear a lot talked about with Native American cultures. Essentially, a lot of different native peoples of the continental U.S. and Canada believe in the idea of the Great Spirit, although there is differences among the religions about whether or not it's a living being or a vague kind of a thing, just a creative force in the universe that just exists, or whether it's actually a spiritual being, a deity of sorts. And you will also see kind of a lot of difference between whether or not it is one being or several beings, whether or not it is in control of lower deities beneath it, or it gets kind of confusing. But the basic idea of the Lakota belief in the Great Spirit, or the Great Mystery as it's supposed to be correctly translated as, known as the Wakan Taka. Wakan essentially meaning the mysterious one, and Taka is great. Well, the name of the deity is Shka, or more often just Shka, and he is separated into, I kid you not, 16 distinct separate beings and personalities, kind of in the same vein that the Christian God is divided into 3. So generally, the Lakota religion beat out George R.R. Martin's idea of the 7 by like a lot. But there is a reason why it's 16. There is a very specific connection in that. But essentially, their religion is all about balance. There are usually 2 gods presiding in check of one, with their powers being in check of one another, and kind of in a state where their powers naturally fight one another, but without both existing, the universe, the world, could not exist. I've tried to kind of narrow down like which ones go together, but that is kind of difficult to determine all of them. I know the obvious ones. I wrote those down together. But this is essentially it. This is the Lakota pantheon of the Wakataka, with Shka at the top, and then you have and also I wrote this as I wrote my language. So as I wrote my version of the Lakota language. So if you're confused, check out my Lakota Yapi alphabet video. But essentially, you have Shka at the top. Honwi and We are the gods of the... Honwi is the moon, and We is the sun. And then the next one you have Wakiya and Iya. Wakiya is the thunderbird, or the god of thunder, and Iya is the god of rock. The reason that those two go together is kind of the basic idea of how storms work on this continent. They always kind of come from the west over the Rocky Mountains, and then because the Rocky Mountains are so tall, they kind of bunch up on the one side and kind of leak across. So you always see, obviously, rock and lightning often in the same place. So that's why those two are together. Then you have Hunamp, the bear, and Tataka, the buffalo. Hunamp essentially being the deity of the mind, essentially the god of wisdom, and Tataka being the deity of the physical, the deity of fortitude and strength. Then you have the four winds. The chief of the north, Wani, is opposed to the chief of the south, Okaga, and the chief of the east, Yampa, is opposed to the chief of the west, Yata. Sometimes it kind of seems like Wani and Yata switch places, and Yata is the north, but Wani, I'm putting Wani as the north basically because of Wanietu, the idea of winter. Where does winter come from? The north. And then, of course, I have the other ones on this side over here. Maka is the earth, Tate is the wind, Yum is the cyclone or the whirlwind, Ka is the first woman, known as the witch, Wazi is the first man, known as the wizard, and Utuktahe is the water. And interestingly enough, with Wazi being the wizard, there is also kind of this idea of this other spiritual being. I'll get into kind of a lot of other stuff with a separate mythological creatures video, but they combined Wazi with the idea of this being, this giant guardian from the north called Iya, and putting those together you get Wazia, which is their word for Santa Claus. And then, of course, below that are a lot of demi-beings. These are known as the Waka, or the mysteries. Essentially, they're kind of divided into groups that are, they each have special characteristics and guard over a certain realm of the world, and usually they have a specific other thing that they're kind of sacred for. That they guard over. I'm not entirely sure what all of those things are for these beings, but that is kind of what it is. When you have a certain kind of problem, you would pray specifically to them for help. But the interesting thing about these is they're kind of in the realm of fairies from Gaelic lore and Jinn from Middle Eastern lore. They're kind of nature spirits, and spirits in the Native American belief system are shapeshifters. They can take any form they want, be anything or anyone, and but they usually have kind of a definitive thing that they're known as being. So here they are. You have Uktehi, which are the Waka of the water. They're described as kind of being a some kind of a ruminant type thing, which would basically, a ruminant is an animal that's kind of like a buffalo or a cow or a goat, that sort of thing, with weirdly long tails. They live in the waters, and they're connected to the art of body painting and sacred painting. And then you have Uxchegila, which are the Waka of land. They're known as kind of being serpentine dragons. They live in volcanoes and are connected to both the fertility of the land, natural disasters, and kind of the cycle of rejuvenation. And kind of in a lot of native societies further east, you have a lot of legends of the these snake-type entities that either live in mountains or in water, who are the enemies of the Thunderbird. And Uxchegila takes the place of those in Lakota myth, and it is actually said that dinosaur bones, which are kind of very prevalent in the Badlands of Montana, kind of skirting the western rim of their territory, the Lakota people's territory, is the evidence of the battles between the Uxchegila and the Thunderbird. And then, of course, you have Wakiyon, who are the spirits of the air. They serve the Wakiyo Thunderbird, who is sometimes given a different name to kind of separate the two from one another. And you will often see these deities will kind of pull the storms, to help the Thunderbird move the storms through the land. You have Tulkan, which are the Waka of the Rock. They are essentially giants, and they are connected to the Sweat Lodge ceremony. The sun is pissing me off. Then you have Tatanka, who are the spirits of the buffalo and the protectors of them. You have Tonti, who are that literally they live in trees. They are kind of elf-like beings who are they live in trees. Obviously, they protect the forests, and they are kind of very good. They appear to people in dreams and are very good at seeing the future and interpreting dreams. And you have Hoknogicha, who are the guardians of the home and the earth, and the Naki, who are the spirits of the shadows. They're essentially described as shadow people. They are kind of the spirits of the deceased who have not been able to pass into the afterlife and have remained on Earth. And essentially, a lot of their religion can be explained through one symbol, and this is a very, very old symbol that kind of permeates through most of Native American culture. It's slightly different in every culture. It goes by different names. In the Lakota culture, it's called the Chogleshka Pajuta, or the medicine wheel. These, of course, are different varieties that I've seen. Yes, that one up there is a swastika. Don't kill me for that. That does not mean what you think it means. Essentially, the medicine wheel is the one in the center. The circle with the cross inside of it. Another variety is kind of it being turned a little bit to an X, but the general variety that you'll find is the middle one. But the basic, how I said that there were 16 deities, this is the general reason. Their symbol, the medicine wheel, can be seen of as kind of a globe with 6 main points. And of course there are 2 gods guarding over each of those 6 points: north, south, east, west, above, and below, which brings you up to 12 deities, the other 4 being the 4 winds represented by the cross in the center. And that, of course, is why that there are 16 different beings. But essentially, the basic point of this symbol is to remind us that all life is sacred, for it all comes from the same place in the beginning and goes to the same place in the end. You can kind of see it as the very central point of this being Shka. All life pours forth from Shka, goes to the 4 corners of the earth, and since this symbol is circular, it has nowhere else to go but back to Shka in the end. Usually this symbol is kind of divided into 4 colors, and each of the 4 directions is given kind of a spirit protector in the form of an animal, and each one has to do with one of the 4 concepts, the 4 main concepts of Lakota morality, and it gets very complex. A lot of these things shift around. The basic thing that I'm going to tell you is that the 4 colors, and depending on which, not even which society you go to, but literally from band to band of the Lakota, Dakota, Nakota peoples, the colors move around to different parts of the circle. But those 4 colors are red, black, yellow, and white. Also, you have the 4 points of Lakota, and of course, the 4 principles that make up Lakota morality, the 4 cornerstones, are generosity, giving to others where and when you are able, helping your community grow and prosper, wisdom, understanding the consequences of your actions, very basic, fortitude, kind of an inner strength, a refusal to give in when you know that what you're doing needs to be done, and respect. Not just kind of a general respect for your elders and for those who help you and take care of you, but generally everything every person does both incurs respect and drives it away, and you always show everyone the respect that they are due, whether that respect is very high or very low. But essentially, the point is that when you enter into prayer to the Great Spirit, these are the Lakota pantheon. These are the four things that you approach the gods with. Essentially, respect for the gods, an inner strength, refusal to give in, no matter what you must do to get what you need, the wisdom to know what to ask, and the willingness to give of yourself in order to receive. Which, this is kind of the part where it can get pretty messed up, because sometimes blood sacrifice of yourself is necessary for certain ceremonies of the Lakota people. But generally though, that isn't that big of an issue, because mostly the religion is practiced primarily by the clergy members and certain members of society who've been ordained. It's very, very rare for a normal person to do anything beyond a simple prayer. Now, of course, there would be three basic groups of people who are part of the religion, essentially. You have the shamans, the sorcerers, and the sacred dancers. And those are the three whose life is primarily practicing the religion. Essentially, you can see the shamans as kind of the preachers, the holy men. They take care of performing certain ceremonies, keeping track of dates, throwing celebrations, ordaining funerals and weddings, and things of that nature. The sorcerers are the medicine men, the ones that practice, that pick the plants and practice the art of healing. And the sacred dancers, generally in this, not in all native religions, but in this one, almost every single dance connected to the religion is almost every single dance connected to the culture is religious in nature, and is usually performed at a religious ceremony or a celebration of sorts. And generally, of course, these people all have like special costumes that they wear. You will see the shamans will usually wear a medicine bag around their necks, essentially a leather thong with a small bag. Usually it'll be in the shape of an animal with some beadwork on it. Generally, inside it'll be containing some kind of herb that is connected to something of their nature, or something that they would normally need help with. And then, of course, they also wear the red cloak and the hat, the shaman's bonnet, which is essentially kind of a buffalo's scalp, the brown hair with the horns, a beadworked headband, and kind of lots of tassels hanging down. The general kind of the things that they normally do when they think that they will keep track of the dates, as I said, when they think that a religious ceremony is necessary, they will practice it they will gather and practice it of themselves. Usually it involves the burning of sweetgrass. In most native religions it's tobacco, but since they were nomadic, they did not have a lot of access to tobacco. So their use of it is greatly reduced, and they replaced it in their culture with sweetgrass. Usually the only times that they use tobacco is for the peace pipe ceremony, which is done before political meetings, and the kind of a cleansing, purging type thing, where they will kind of, known as smudging, where they will burn tobacco in a bowl and wave it with a fan of feathers of a kind of sacred bird, usually kind of an eagle or a crow or something of that nature, over a space or a person to kind of purge them of evil. The medicine men, going into the next one, the sorcerers, they generally practice magic, and they will usually wear a coyote hide, what is known as the brown bonnet, the coyote hide, over their heads. They are more than anything else, they're doctors. But the general nature of Lakota religion implies that everything that you cannot clearly see what has happened is the work of Shka. And so generally they don't necessarily believe when they give you medicine that the medicine has something in it that has made you better. They see the medicine that they gave you as a door that has opened you to Shka's power to heal you through them. And that is kind of where another thing that they have a great deal in common with Christianity again. Generally it's said that if you ever come to believe that you are the master of the power to use that would be taken away from you forever. Essentially, you would no longer be able to give, if no matter what you gave someone, the medicine would no longer ever work. But sorcerers go beyond that role in society. They actually are legitimately sorcerers. They practice magic. They're usually worship a lot of the darker gods. There are some gods that are generally in some native cultures that are considered evil. The sorcerers in most native cultures are the ones who practice that kind of the magic. And then, of course, you have the sacred dancers. Essentially, their entire role is just knowing the dances and performing them when they're needed. And as I said, normal people would not do much more than just pray to the deities, but every once in a while when it is necessary, there are certain ceremonies that would require normal people in order to be done. One of them, of course, is the Lakota version of the Vision Quest. You can actually see this on on Hell on Wheels, performed by Cheyenne natives, where a person is pierced and then has a rope woven through the piercings and tied to two poles, and they are to sit there hanging back from their bleeding wounds, trying to keep track of the sun until they have and stay like that alone in the middle of nowhere until they have a vision from the gods. Generally, this kind of thing would be enough to cause a psychotic break in someone, and that, of course, would perfectly well account for seeing things that aren't there, and then afterwards being more or less okay. But that is not safe. That could kill you. Normally, they also... The ceremony can take multiple days, and during that time they also don't eat, they don't drink, and they spend the entire time making a wound that they've been given worse by leaning into it. But there's that. Another ceremony that it's normal people participate in is sometimes when a person is very, very sick and normal medicine won't work, the sorcerer and the shaman will come together and perform a ceremony on the person together, where they will build a medicine wheel with rocks on the ground, place the person in the center, and try to use both magic and medicine at the same time. In this, the person's family will gather around the edges of the circle, going back and forth between praying and dancing. Native American, the Lakota, swear up and down that this works because this is showing the person that how much their family cares about them and giving them more strength to fight back against the illness. But that's I suppose that's that could be a possibility. But anyway, that's another ceremony. And then, of course, you have the Sweat Lodge ceremony. This is usually used for initiation rites, initiating someone into a society. And normally, this constitutes the people involved in the ceremony, both the teachers and the initiates, going out into the middle of nowhere, building the shelter from scratch on site, and then interring themselves inside and doing the Sweat Lodge ceremony, getting more or less naked down to a loincloth, heating up rocks in a fire, and then piling the heated rocks in the center of the room and pouring water on them. It is believed that the spirits of the rocks come out with the water and dance with you in the room. And through the steam, when you inhale the steam, you are inhaling the spirits into your body, and they purge you of kind of impurities, and you come out the other end of it feeling a lot better. So kind of generally in that instance, I mean, I guess sweat lodges, saunas would be considered a part of their religion. Technically, you could probably even substitute it for a hot tub at this point, but generally that's used for initiation rites. The person performing the sweat lodge ceremony would be teaching the people within certain sacred aspects of the society that they're entering, and granting them duties in the future while they are preparing the sweat lodge. And this is kind of the basic idea of how that works. The last thing that you need to understand about their society is their beliefs in the afterlife. Essentially, you have most native peoples from the Maya down in southern Mexico all the way up through Canada believe in a connection between water and the supernatural. Usually water is seen as a doorway to the supernatural. The Lakota believe that, of course, everything has a balance, and the balance to water is sky. To them, the reflection of the water is the doorway to the supernatural world, and then at night, in the night sky, you can see the spirit world as the stars spread out in the sky, as this is kind of a reflection of the spirit world. It gets complicated. But they believe that the stars are the spirits of those who have died and passed on, and of those yet to be born, known as the Wee-Chaw, or the star people. Beyond this, there is kind of a lot of interesting interconnections. Most stuff that you'll see in the mythology is connected to the religion and gives it a deeper dimension, but more often than not, the mythology is more connected to the people's day-to-day life than it is their beliefs. More often than not, they will believe in a lot of the beings in the stories, but they will not actually believe the stories themselves are true. They just see it as a vessel to pass on knowledge. You will the basic thing of the soul's journey. When the person is born, people pray to the guardian of the spirit world, known as the Blue Woman, or Towe, to allow the child to come into the world. And then, of course, in death, the person will travel the Milky Way, what they call the Spirit Road, and meet Towe. And if who judges them, based on what she can essentially see through their soul, see kind of what kind of person they are and what kind of person they've been in their life. And if she is not impressed, she throws you off the spirit road and you fall back to this world to stay as a wanagi, or a wandering spirit. And if she is impressed with you, she lets you pass on down the spirit road, where you are initiated, purged in a sweat lodge ceremony, and granted access into the afterlife, where you join the rest of the stars. an interesting thing that I can, two more interesting things that I can say about this is the general belief in the pets. Lakota people generally had 3 different kinds of animals that they would keep as pets: dogs, horses, and ravens, which they kind of kept the same reason people keep parrots. Blackbird, crow type birds are very, very smart, and they can learn to speak. But essentially it's believed that when your pets die, their spirits stay with you in this world, and then when you die, you all cross over together. Another interesting thing is the being called Wahope, or the white buffalo calf woman. She is kind of seen as an angel of sorts. She is the goddess of the falling star, and a ceremony is performed to her every time a falling meteorite is seen at night. But generally she is known as the being who helped humans come into this world and prosper here and showed them how to live, and also came to the Lakota and showed them how to survive on the plains, and gave them a lot of gave them their connection to the buffalo and showed them how to hunt the buffalo, and granted them the first peace pipe, which they consider to be a sacred artifact. Anyway, one way or the other, that's generally Lakota religion for you. One way or the other, that's all I have to say on this subject.